In the show, I'm like a little celebrity here because I'm going to be videotaped. I have three pieces in this show. I have this one and this one here, and then the one with the pear and the flowers in the far wall. And I guess I basically wanted to talk about some of my influences and then just briefly talk about the paintings. First of all, I grew up in northern Illinois, and I grew up in a home where we tried to make everything handmade. I had handmade quilts from both grandmothers and my mother. My mother painted. There's paintings. My mother's almost 92, and there's paintings all over her house that she did herself. We did paper mache. We made our own jam. I mean, that's just how I grew up. I grew up in a very creative household. And I also am very influenced by music. I took the violin from the age of 8, and I played the violin, piano, and viola all through high school, and I still play the violin, so music is a big part of my life. I also got my master's degree in audiology, and I worked for 10 years. I learned sign language, and I also got a teaching certificate for the deaf. After that, I started to take classes in 1987 at the Cheltenham Arts Center. My first teacher was Bill Scott, and I don't know if any of you know Bill, but he was a very big influence on me, and he realized that when I started to take the class, I was just so enthusiastic, and you can ask my husband. I used to come home, I was just so thrilled to be able to paint. It was like a step over from music to painting to me in my head, because in violin, the passion and the communication of what you say in music was important to me. I always had to work on my etudes and the technique, but it was what I wanted to say with my music that was the most important. So when I got to painting, I had this brush and I had the colors, and Bill saw that enthusiasm, and he did things like told me to paint more than one painting at a time, look at my subject but don't look at the paper, use color, use line, use pastel, use whatever. And he had me start out in watercolor, which was really very interesting because a lot of people do not start in watercolor. And he was very much into taking that creativity and passion that I had and putting it on the paper and the canvas. I started to take courses at the Academy of Fine Arts, and around 1998 I started to teach art in high school because I had a teaching certificate. And I taught for 5 years, and I decided that I wanted to work full-time in my studio. And one thing that I really found out by teaching was that you can have, and Bonnie's going to attest to this, you can have a still life set up, and you can have 20 people around that still life, and every single person is going to do a different painting. You can do a photograph of it, you can see what it looks like, but everyone is going to have a different rendering of those objects. And that's what I saw when I taught these kids, because I taught them how to draw and how to use the paint, but then they took what was within themselves and put it on the canvas. And I really love that about painting. And I feel because of my musical background and the home that I grew up in, the emotion is really important to me, and I like to communicate through color. So to look at my particular paintings, the top one I did right after a Charles Reed workshop that I took a year ago. And it's really about coming home and at first feeling a little discouraged because I didn't know if I could, master all the techniques that he had taught me, and trying to set up more of a classical setup and really applying the color and the methods that he showed me and making, I guess, more of a traditional still life. And I really was very pleased with the outcome with that. And then the second painting I did was the pear and mauve one, which is straight ahead. And that was actually a setup that was in Bonnie's still life class. And when you're in a still life class, you don't have a lot of things to work with. I mean, you have flowers, you have vases, you have a background, you have fruit, whatever Bonnie can muster together to bring in. And we had a beautiful setup with flowers. I think Sally may have been in that class. And we had some fruit. And I remember I did the watercolor in class, and I brought it home, and I thought, I'm just going to go crazy. I put some music on, I took out my pastels and my ink, and I started just to make it really exciting. And I think through the color and the medium of the pastel put on top of the watercolor is what I think makes it very vibrant. And then the latest painting I did was this one over here called Roses and Magical Mendocino. And I'm really pleased with this painting. My husband and I took a trip this summer to California, to Mendocino, which we really love. And it's a really, almost a magical place. You drive and drive and drive, and you come out and you're You're near the ocean, and it's just gorgeous. It's a difficult place to get to. And the place that we stay at has these gardens where these beautiful roses are. I took all kinds of pictures, and I got home, and about 2 weeks later, I took one of my photographs, and I just started to paint. And I was very influenced by Joseph Raphael. I've been looking at his work a lot. I don't know if anyone is familiar with him. And I just kind of put myself in, I guess, like meditative, Zen mood. And I just painted what I was feeling looking at the photograph. And when I looked at it at the end, I thought, you know what, it really does look magical, which is how I felt about the area. And I really did that with the manipulation of the paint and the color. And watercolor is a very difficult medium. And I kind of think, I also paint in oil, and I kind of think of oil as like when you have a dog as a pet, you can train it, you can make it obedient, you can make it eventually do what you want, which is the way I look at oil. Watercolor is more like a cat. You cannot train it to do what you want, but you love to have it there. That's the way watercolor is. You don't know what's going to happen, but it's really a love affair. So anyone have any questions?
I'm interested in this composition because it's so different than the other paintings that you have, the roses. Yeah, and you said that you worked from one photograph or a number of photographs?
One photograph.
But somehow it seems very unstuck from one point of view.
Well, I do think, I was looking at Joseph Raphael's work a lot because I ordered his book, and I was really looking at how he did the negative space. He does a lot of color and patterns, and kind of like you don't really know what the patterns really are, but they're very intriguing, very colorful. And I guess I just looked at what was in the background in the photograph and just interpreted it through color. I didn't want it to be a photograph.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in doing photographic realism. I was interested in trying to capture the feeling that I had when I was there.
Yeah. You did. Yeah, it's a really nice painting.
Thank you.
The sense of really in your face and deep space.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.